In the vast biblical universe, angels occupy a fascinating and enigmatic place. They are spiritual beings, created by God, who play essential roles in the divine narrative, messengers who convey the heavenly will, guardians who protect the righteous, and warriors who fight against the forces of evil. However, not all angels remain faithful to their original purpose. In the sacred story, we find the account of those who, driven by ambition, pride, and rebellion, strayed from the path of obedience and became what we now know as fallen angels. The purpose of this video is to explore the story of 4 of these fallen angels mentioned in biblical and apocryphal texts: Lucifer, Samaisa, Azazel, and Beelzebub. Who were they before their fall? What actions led them to defy God's authority? And what is their role in the biblical narrative? These are some of the questions we will answer as we delve into their stories. To better understand these fallen angels, we must first place them in their original context as heavenly creatures. Angels, in their essence, were created with a clear purpose: to serve and worship God, diligently fulfilling His designs. However, within this divine hierarchy, some angels, endowed with great powers and responsibilities, began to question their role and long for power that was not theirs to claim. This deviation, this rupture with their original nature, is what led to their eventual fall and condemnation. Thus, before delving into the individual stories of Lucifer, Samaisa, Azazel, and Beelzebub, it is essential to understand the background that surrounds them, the creation and purpose of angels, the hierarchical structure of heaven, and the first signs of rebellion that would mark the beginning of a cosmic battle between good and evil. With this understanding, we can better appreciate the motivations and consequences of their actions, as well as their impact on humanity and the course of sacred history. To understand the story of the fallen angels, it is essential first to explore the nature and original purpose of angels. According to biblical tradition, God created angels before the existence of the world and humanity. These celestial beings are not made of flesh and blood, but are spiritual entities with a pure essence, which profoundly distinguishes them from humans. Their creation serves a fundamental purpose: to serve and worship God, carrying out His will both in heaven and on earth. Angels were conceived as instruments of divine will. Throughout Scripture, they are seen performing diverse and crucial roles. From announcing miraculous births to protecting the righteous in times of danger, angels act as executors of God's commands. However, beyond these active functions, their existence is deeply linked to the constant worship and service of their Creator. In essence, they are part of God's heavenly court, reflecting His glory and power in all their actions. Angels do not form a homogeneous group. There are hierarchies and classifications that determine their functions and proximity to God. Broadly speaking, we can distinguish 2 main categories. Ordinary angels. These are the angels most frequently mentioned in biblical accounts. They are tasked with specific responsibilities, such as protecting humans, delivering divine messages, and executing judgments on behalf of God. Their work is primarily operational, ensuring that divine will is fulfilled in every corner of the universe. Archangels. At the pinnacle of the angelic hierarchy are the archangels. These beings possess unparalleled beauty and power and lead the heavenly hosts in their battles against the forces of evil. Archangels are the natural leaders among angels, responsible for directing and coordinating the actions of the celestial army. Among them, Archangel Michael stands out as one of the most prominent, known for his role in the battle against Lucifer. Despite their pure nature and divine purpose, some angels began to develop feelings that distanced them from their original objective. Driven by pride, envy, and an excessive ambition, these angels started questioning God's authority. They saw themselves as equals or even superior to their Creator and began plotting a rebellion. This schism in heaven marked the beginning of what we know as the story of the fallen angels. Led by figures like Lucifer, these angels openly defied God, attempting to establish their own dominion in heaven. However, their rebellion was not merely seen as an act of disobedience, but as a betrayal of the very essence of their creation. By rebelling, these angels not only distanced themselves from God, but also renounced the light and grace that had been bestowed upon them. The rebellion in heaven culminated in a cosmic war, in which the angels loyal to God, led by Archangel Michael, defeated the rebels. As punishment for their betrayal, these angels were expelled from heaven and condemned to water in darkness, forever separated from the divine presence. From that moment, they became known as fallen angels, beings created for the light, who now dwell in the shadows, seeking to challenge God and corrupt humanity. These fallen angels are not merely figures from ancient myths. Their influence and actions have left a deep mark on sacred history and humanity. Their fall is a reminder of the dangers of pride and excessive ambition, and how even the most elevated beings can succumb to temptation. With this context, we are ready to explore the specific stories of the four most prominent fallen angels: Lucifer, Samaisa, Azazel, and Beelzebub. Each has a unique tale of rebellion and fall that will help us better understand the scope and nature of their influence in the biblical narrative. Among all the fallen angels, none is more renowned or influential than Lucifer. His name, meaning bearer of light, reflects both his original splendor and his exalted position in heaven before his fall. Lucifer was not just any angel. He was an archangel, one of the beings closest to God, endowed with incomparable beauty and power. His story is one of the most tragic and complex in the Bible, a tale of how unchecked ambition can transform the brightest light into the deepest darkness. In his original state, Lucifer held a crucial role in the celestial kingdom. According to scripture and Christian tradition, he was the archangel in charge of music and song in heaven. As the bearer of light, his duty was to reflect the glory of God, filling the heavens with harmony and beauty. His closeness to God and his preeminent role granted him a position of the highest honor and responsibility. He is often described as the most beautiful being in all creation, an angel whose appearance and talents made him stand out among the entire heavenly host. But this exalted position also sowed the seeds of his fall. Lucifer began to look at himself and his splendor with excessive admiration. His pride grew, and with it, an insatiable desire for power. According to the prophet Isaiah, Lucifer expressed in his heart a desire to rise above his position, to be equal to or even greater than God. It was no longer enough for him to be a reflection of divine glory. He wanted to be the source of that glory. This desire led him to question God's authority and to plot a rebellion. Lucifer was not alone in this thinking. He managed to convince a significant number of angels to join his cause. His charisma and power of persuasion were such that many angels followed him in his defiance of God's supreme authority. This rebellion was not merely an act of disobedience, but a direct attempt to usurp the divine throne and establish his own kingdom in heaven. Lucifer's rebellion triggered a war in heaven, a cosmic conflict that pitted the angels loyal to God against Lucifer's followers. In this battle, Archangel Michael, leader of the loyal celestial forces, stood as Lucifer's principal adversary. Michael, whose name means, "Who is like God?" led the angels in a fierce struggle to defend divine order. Biblical accounts, especially in the book of Revelation, describe how Lucifer's forces were defeated. Despite his power and the followers he had gathered, Lucifer could not prevail against God's will, executed by Michael and the faithful angels. The defeat was absolute, and as a consequence, Lucifer and his followers were expelled from heaven, banished forever from God's presence. Lucifer's fall was not only physical, but also spiritual. Upon being cast out of heaven, Lucifer underwent a radical transformation. The bearer of light became Satan, the adversary. This new identity reflected his new purpose, to oppose God in every possible way. Satan is not only God's enemy but also humanity's foe. His goal is to tempt and deceive human beings, drawing them away from divine light and into darkness. In the New Testament, Satan is described as the father of lies and the prince of this world. These descriptions highlight his role as the great deceiver, the one who seeks to distort God's truth and corrupt human souls. Throughout the Bible, we see Satan acting subtly and cunningly, always finding ways to divert humanity from its path toward God. Lucifer's story is a powerful reminder of the dangers of pride and unchecked ambition. His tale shows how even the brightest of created beings can fall into darkness when straying from their divine purpose. By studying Lucifer's story, we not only gain a better understanding of the nature of evil, but also learn a valuable lesson about the importance of humility and obedience to God's will. With Lucifer transformed into Satan, humanity faces a formidable adversary, but his story does not end here. The fate of Lucifer, along with the other fallen angels, will ultimately be sealed in the final judgment when good prevails and God's kingdom is established forever. But before reaching that point, we must explore the stories of other fallen angels who, like Lucifer, have left an indelible mark on sacred history. Within the legends and ancient texts that complement the biblical narrative, the fascinating and tragic story of Samaisa stands out, an angel whose rebellion had profound consequences for humanity. Although not as well known as Lucifer, Samaisa's story is rich in nuance and symbolism, shedding light on the complex relationship between angels and humans. Samaisa, whose name means the one who sees God, was one of the wisest and most powerful angels. He held a leadership position as the head of a group of angels known as the Watchers. These angels were given a specific mission by God to watch over humanity, guide its development, and ensure the divine order was maintained on earth. Unlike other angels who operated in heaven, the Watchers were sent directly to earth to interact with and care for humans. The Watchers were not mere observers. They were tasked with educating humanity in essential aspects of knowledge and life. In the Book of Enoch, an apocryphal text that recounts the story of Samaisa and his companions, these angels are described as imparting valuable teachings to humans, including skills essential for their survival and progress. However, despite their noble mission, the Watchers began to stray from their original purpose. As they spent more time among humans, they developed an increasing attraction to the daughters of men. This attraction, which directly defied the divine law forbidding any union between angels and humans, marked the beginning of Samaisa and his group's downfall. As the leader of the Watchers, Samaisa faced a dilemma when his companions began expressing their desire to unite with human women. Although he knew this violated God's will, Samaisa eventually gave in to pressure and desire, leading this transgression. According to the Book of Enoch, Samaisa and the Watchers made a pact to carry out this forbidden act, binding their fates to the daughters of men. This illicit union unleashed a chain of catastrophic events. The offspring of these unions were the Nephilim, giants with superhuman abilities and strength who soon began wreaking havoc on earth. The Nephilim, belonging neither to the heavenly nor the human realm, became a source of unprecedented corruption and violence. Humanity, whom the Watchers were meant to protect, now suffered the consequences of their rebellion. Beyond their unions with humans, Samaisa and the Watchers committed another grave sin. They began teaching humans knowledge that was reserved exclusively for heaven. They revealed secrets about astrology, magic, and the crafting of weapons and jewelry, knowledge that, in human hands, led to greater corruption and a deviation from God's path. These teachings, though seemingly beneficial, fostered violence, idolatry, and immorality among humans. For example, the crafting of weapons escalated war and death, while the creation of ornaments and jewelry fueled vanity and idolatry. By sharing these secrets, Shemaiah not only defied divine commands, but also accelerated humanity's moral decline. The rebellion of Shemaiah and the Watchers did not go unnoticed by God. The corruption and violence on earth reached intolerable levels, prompting God to take drastic action, sending a flood to cleanse the earth of the evil brought about by the Nephilim and humans. This cataclysm, known as the Great Flood, was divine judgment against the corruption unleashed by Shemaiah and his companions. As a direct punishment for their transgressions, Shemaiah and the Watchers were bound and cast into the abyss, a place of darkness and torment where they will remain until the day of judgment. This abyss, described as a realm of utter desolation and suffering, became the eternal prison for these fallen angels, who now await their final fate. Although the flood physically wiped out the Nephilim, their spirits, according to some traditions, survived. These spirits, stripped of their physical bodies, became demons, malevolent entities that roam the earth seeking bodies to possess. The corrupting influence of the Nephilim thus continues in the world, posing a constant threat to humanity. The story of Shemaiah is a powerful reminder of the consequences of disobedience and the abuse of power. His fall, driven by desire and ambition, not only led to his own condemnation, but also triggered a series of events that profoundly impacted human history. Shemaiah, like other fallen angels, symbolizes how even the highest beings can succumb to temptation and alter the course of creation. Azazel is one of the fallen angels whose story resonates strongly in biblical and apocryphal traditions. Unlike other fallen angels whose sins were tied more closely to ambition or desire, Azazel is particularly known for introducing violence and corruption through forbidden knowledge. His dark influence left an indelible mark on humanity, branding the world with the stigma of war, idolatry, and immorality. Azazel, whose name means the one God strengthens, was an angel of great power and skill, particularly in the art of war. Before his fall, Azazel was distinguished by his bravery and prowess in battle qualities that earned him respect and fear among his peers. However, these very talents, which define him as a military leader in the heavenly armies, became tools of corruption when he strayed from the path of obedience to God. Like Shemaiah and other fallen angels, Azazel was part of the group known as the Watchers, those angels sent to earth to oversee humanity. However, his role among humans proved particularly pernicious. While the Watchers fell in love with the daughters of men and united with them, Azazel took corruption a step further by teaching humanity the use of metals and the crafting of weapons. This knowledge, both reserved and dangerous, unleashed an era of unprecedented violence and warfare on earth. Azazel not only taught the forging of weapons, but also introduced practices that promoted vanity and idolatry. He taught humans how to craft armor and work precious metals into jewelry, encouraging superficiality and material desire. The introduction of cosmetics, ornaments, and other beautifying elements fostered moral deviation, distancing humanity from spiritual pursuits and drawing them closer to sin and self-indulgence. The impact of Azazel's teachings was devastating. The weapons he helped create became instruments of death and destruction, exacerbating conflicts and spilling innocent blood across the earth. Violence, which had previously been isolated, became a constant feature of human life. Wars and disputes began to define relationships between people and nations, pulling humanity further away from the original purpose God intended for them. On the other hand, the introduction of jewelry, cosmetics, and other forms of adornment fed vanity and idolatry. people began to worship outward beauty and material objects, forgetting spiritual and moral values. This deviation led to widespread corruption, where appearance and status became the primary goals in life, instead of the pursuit of truth and righteousness. By sharing this forbidden knowledge, Azazel not only corrupted humans, but also created a deep rift between them and God. Human society, instead of being a harmonious and just community, became a battlefield both literally and figuratively. Azazel's sin did not go unpunished. God, seeing the devastation and corruption Azazel had brought to the world, acted decisively. According to the book of Enoch, God commanded Archangel Raphael to capture Azazel and bind him in a remote place in the desert. There, shrouded in darkness, Azazel was condemned to remain until the day of judgment, when he will finally face eternal punishment for his crimes. This imprisonment in the desert symbolizes not only physical confinement, but also a definitive separation from divine grace. Azazel, once a powerful and respected angel, was reduced to a state of darkness and isolation, awaiting the final judgment, where he will be cast into the lake of fire along with the other fallen angels. Azazel's figure is also connected to an ancient ritual mentioned in the book of Leviticus, known as the Day of Atonement or Yom Kippur. During this ritual, 2 goats were chosen, one to be sacrificed to the Lord and the other for Azazel. The goat destined for Azazel, known as the scapegoat, was symbolically burdened with the sins of the people of Israel, and then sent into the wilderness, carrying with it the transgressions of the community. This ritual symbolized not only the removal of sin, but also the rejection of everything Azazel represented: corruption, violence, and immorality. By sending the scapegoat into the wilderness, far from the community, the people of Israel expressed their desire to purify themselves and distance themselves from the malevolent influences Azazel had introduced into the world. Among the fallen angels, Beelzebub stands out for his connection to impurity and the grotesque, embodying a type of corruption that transcends violence and rebellion to represent decay and disease. Known as the Lord of the Flies, Beelzebub symbolizes both physical and spiritual rot, and his influence has persisted from biblical times to modern conceptions of evil. The name Beelzebub originates from the Hebrew Baal-zebub, meaning Lord of the Flies. This title already suggests his association with pestilence, decay, and impurity. Unlike other fallen angels who retain an air of grandeur or power, Beelzebub is described as one of the most repugnant and vile angels. His transformation from a celestial being to such a revolting figure reflects his profound descent into the abyss of corruption. Before his fall, Beelzebub was an angel of high rank, but his celestial identity was entirely consumed by his later role as a demon associated with the lowly and the filthy. In both biblical scriptures and legends, Beelzebub has come to symbolize the opposite of divine purity: filth, disease, and chaos. Beelzebub is not merely a figure of corruption. He was also worshipped as a god by some ancient cultures, amplifying his influence and power in the world. In the Philistine city of Ekron, Beelzebub was venerated as a deity capable of controlling plagues and diseases. The Philistines believed they could appease his wrath and gain his favor through sacrifices and offerings. However, these idolatrous practices, far from alleviating suffering, only intensified the calamities that afflicted those who worshipped him. In the Old Testament, it is recounted how the Philistines, after taking the Ark of the Covenant from Israel, were punished with plagues and diseases. Desperate, they attempted to offer sacrifices to Beelzebub to end their afflictions, but their efforts were in vain. The story implies that seeking refuge in a being as corrupt as Beelzebub only leads to greater despair and chaos. Beelzebub's name resurfaces in the New Testament, where he is directly associated with Satan and demons. The Pharisees, opponents of Jesus, accused him of casting out demons by the power of Beelzebub, suggesting that Jesus was in league with the forces of evil. However, Jesus countered with simple yet powerful logic. If Satan drives out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then can his kingdom stand? With this response, Jesus dismissed the accusation and reaffirmed that his power came from God, not from any prince of demons. This mention of Beelzebub underscores his position in the infernal hierarchy as a powerful leader among demons, directly identified with the forces of evil opposing God. Although in the Gospels he appears as an accuser, his power is depicted as limited when confronted by divine authority. Beelzebub has come to symbolize various aspects of moral and physical corruption. As the Lord of the Flies, he represents decay, disease, and all that is filthy and degrading. Flies, associated with death and decomposition, reflect Beelzebub's corrupting influence on the world, infesting and destroying everything pure and healthy. In addition to his association with disease, Beelzebub also symbolizes idolatry. His worship by the Philistines and his connection to demons in the New Testament show how his influence leads humans away from God and toward corrupt and unworthy sources of power. Idolatry, in this sense, is a form of spiritual corruption where the devotion meant for God is diverted to figures representing evil and degeneration. In Christian traditions, Beelzebub is known as one of the princes of demons, a figure of authority within the infernal realm. His dominion over demons makes him a feared but also deeply loathed figure. Beelzebub not only corrupts individuals, but also leads other malevolent beings in their efforts to corrupt and destroy God's creation. His title, Lord of the Flies, is more than a mere epithet. It is a reflection of his nature and influence. Flies, which feed on death and decay, are a perfect metaphor for how Beelzebub thrives in corruption and degeneration. His kingdom is not one of glory or power in the traditional sense, but one of disintegration, where what is beautiful and pure is broken down and ruined. Beelzebub personifies the most repugnant aspects of evil: corruption, disease, idolatry, and moral and physical degradation. Through his story, we see how evil can infiltrate human life, not only through grand acts of rebellion, but also through subtle, persistent corruption that spreads like a plague. His role as a leader of demons and his association with idolatry and impurity highlight the gravity of his fall and his negative influence on the world. Yet, like all fallen angels, Beelzebub's story does not end with his power over corruption. His ultimate fate, like that of all the fallen, is sealed in divine judgment, where his power will be finally destroyed and creation restored to its original purity. Throughout this journey through the history of the fallen angels, we have observed how beings of incomparable purity and power transformed into symbols of corruption, rebellion, and evil. Lucifer, Samaisa, Azazel, and Beelzebub each defied divine authority and fell from the heights of heaven to the depths of the abyss. However, the biblical narrative does not end with their fall, but anticipates a final destiny in which evil will be defeated and divine justice will prevail. Despite their power and the profound influence they have exerted over humanity and the world, the power of the fallen angels is not eternal. The Bible and other sacred texts assure us that their time on earth and in the cosmos is limited. The evil they have unleashed and the consequences of their rebellion will be finally eradicated when the final judgment arrives. This destiny is a central element of Christian eschatology, where it is prophesied that God will put an end to the destructive influence of these beings. The fallen angels, though powerful, are not omnipotent. They are subject to God's judgment, and their actions, no matter how catastrophic, are part of the divine plan that will ultimately culminate in their defeat. According to Scripture, there will come a day when all the forces of evil will be confronted in a final and decisive battle. where they will be judged and condemned once and for all. The book of Revelation, the last book of the New Testament, offers a dramatic vision of the final destiny of Satan and his followers, including the fallen angels. This text describes a great cosmic battle in which God, along with his heavenly armies led by Archangel Michael, will confront the forces of evil in their last stand. Revelation 12 verses 7 to 9 recounts how Michael and his angels fight against the dragon, a representation of Satan, and his angels, and how they are defeated and permanently cast out of heaven. This event marks the beginning of the end for the fallen angels, who, although they continue their rebellion on earth for a time, are destined for final defeat. In Revelation 20 verses 1 to 3, it is narrated how Satan is bound for 1,000 years and cast into the abyss, a temporary prison where he will be held so he cannot deceive the nations anymore. Finally, in Revelation 20 verse 10, the ultimate fate of Satan and, by extension, the fallen angels is mentioned. They will be cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, a place of eternal torment, where they will remain forever separated from God's creation. The lake of fire is described in Revelation as the final destination not only for Satan, but also for all the fallen angels and those who have rejected God. This place is not simply a prison, but a state of perpetual torment, where divine justice will be manifested in its purest form. The fallen angels, who once dwelt in the light and glory of God, will now be condemned to an existence of endless darkness and suffering. This eternal punishment is the culmination of their actions, the rebellion against God, the corruption of humanity, and the perpetuation of evil in the world. The lake of fire represents the total separation from God's grace and presence, an irreversible state that reflects the gravity of their crimes. Although the story of the fallen angels is marked by rebellion and corruption, the final message is one of hope and redemption. Revelation, while narrating terrifying visions of the end times, is also a book of hope for believers. It assures us that, in the end, God will triumph over all forms of evil, and his kingdom will be established forever. The final destiny of the fallen angels is an essential part of this triumph. Their defeat and punishment symbolize the ultimate victory of justice over injustice, light over darkness. The promise of Revelation is that, after the final judgment, there will be no more pain, death, or evil in the world. Evil, personified in the fallen angels, and Satan will be destroyed forever, and creation will be restored to its original state of peace and harmony. The story of the fallen angels leads us to reflect on the power of free will, the consequences of our choices, and the nature of good and evil. These beings, once closed to God, chose to rebel and follow a path of destruction. Their final destiny is a reminder of the seriousness of rebellion against divine authority, but also of the inevitability of justice and redemption. As we contemplate the fate of the fallen angels, we are called to reflect on our own lives and choices. Their fall and condemnation serve as a warning but also as an affirmation that, in the end, good will triumph. God, in his infinite justice and mercy, will not allow evil to have the last word. Creation, though damaged by sin, will be renewed and restored, and those who have kept their faith will be rewarded with eternal life in the presence of God. We have journeyed through a fascinating and, at times, dark path exploring the stories of the fallen angels. From the dazzling rebellion of Lucifer to the insidious corruption of Azazel, through the ambition of Samaisa and the decay of Beelzebub, each of these beings represents a different facet of the descent from good into evil, from order into chaos. Their stories serve as both warnings and revelations about the nature of power, corruption, and divine justice. Each of the fallen angels we have explored played a unique role in the biblical and apocryphal narratives. Lucifer, the bearer of light, whose ambition to be equal to God led to a rebellion that ended in his fall and transformation into Satan, the eternal adversary of humanity. Samaisa, the leader of the Watchers, whose desire for the daughters of men led him to corrupt the earth, triggering a chain of events that resulted in the birth of the Nephilim and an unprecedented wave of corruption. Azazel, the angel who taught humans to forge weapons and jewelry, spreading violence, war, and vanity across the world, and who was punished with confinement in the desert, awaiting the final judgment. Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, personifying corruption, disease, and idolatry, whose dominion over plagues and decay made him a symbol of moral and physical degradation. Through their stories, we see how each of these fallen angels, despite their attempts to defy divine authority and corrupt God's creation, cannot escape divine justice. Their actions, however destructive, are ultimately contained within God's greater plan, which culminates in their final defeat and the restoration of order and purity to creation. The ultimate fate of these fallen angels reminds us that, though evil may thrive for a time, its triumph is temporary, and its power is limited. God, in His infinite wisdom and justice, ensures that good will prevail in the end. This is a message of hope for humanity. No matter how dark the times, the light of God will always shine at the end of the tunnel. These stories invite us to reflect on our own lives and choices. The fallen angels were beings of immense power and beauty who, through pride, ambition, or desire, chose to stray from their divine purpose. Their fall and ultimate fate are a reminder of the dangers of disobedience and corruption, but also of God's mercy and justice. For viewers, these stories can serve as both a warning and a guide. They show us that, while temptation and corruption are ever present, our choices carry consequences, and that, in the end, good and justice will prevail. They encourage us to remain steadfast in our faith and follow the path of light, trusting that, just as the fallen angels were judged, we too will be rewarded for our faithfulness. The journey through the stories of Lucifer, Samaisa, Azazel, and Beelzebub has allowed us to explore profound aspects of faith, morality, and justice. Now, we invite you to reflect on what you have learned and share this knowledge with others. These stories, though ancient, hold relevance in today's world, where the struggles between good and evil continue to manifest in different ways. Sharing this video and these stories with friends and family not only helps spread this knowledge, but also opens the door to important discussions about the nature of evil, the power of redemption, and the inevitable triumph of good. Ultimately, the story of the fallen angels is one of warning, redemption, and hope. Through the fall of these powerful beings, we learn valuable lessons about humility, obedience, and the nature of evil. Most importantly, we are reminded of the fundamental truth: good, guided by God's will always triumph.